Good morning. We welcome you to Power Talks with Beth Ann and Melody Cedarstrom in the morning, where talk is real, truth is in the talk, and there is power in truth. Therefore, we name the show Power Talks. And we welcome you this morning. I'm Beth Ann, and welcome, Melody. Good morning.
Well, good morning to you, and again, good morning to the listeners. It's great to be here, and I'm certainly counting my blessings, but certainly we have to keep our thoughts and prayers for the folks in Florida and for those that are recovering in Houston area, and not just the Houston area, the southern Texas area where
Louisiana.
Louisiana, and I guess now there was a 8-point earthquake.
Yes, on the Richter scale in earthquake last night in Mexico last night. Yes, just devastating. So there's lots of a prayer need there and other needs as well. And there's 3 hurricanes that they think that might make landfall out in the Atlantic yet. So we are having a tremendous hurricane season. Not only that, you know what happened last night?
What?
The Chiefs beat the Patriots. I'm not sure if that caused the earthquake, but my earth shook just a little bit.
Well, what was it? A good game, or was it?
It was a good game. It was a good game. It really was a good game. So, yeah.
Well, that gave me goosebumps because I love to see the Patriots beat.
Oh yeah, it was amazing. It really was. So, well, you've been after me to get a guest.
Yes.
And I have
heard
done.
You have a great one.
I do have a good one, and he makes my job easy because he's quite the public speaker and an excellent debater. So if you got your questions ready, we're going to bring on, and we're going to talk about immigration today, illegal and legal immigration. We're going to talk about the DACA and what's going on there. And then we have some other questions. But we're bringing to you today Michael Cutler. He's a retired special senior agent with the INS. He spoke before the 9/11 Commission, and he's just done a tremendous job. He's kind of put his life into educating people. He was literally boots on the ground. And Mike, I want you to meet Melody Cedarstrom of Discount Gold and Silver Trading, and she sponsors this show as well as CSC Talk Radio. And she is, as you are, she is dedicated to educating the American people, and we're trying our very best to bring them the truth. And we welcome you to Power Talks today, Mike.
Well, thank you so much. Happy Friday, everybody. Melody, great to meet you. Beth, it's wonderful, as always, to join you on the air.
It's a pleasure, Mike.
And you're
Thank
right.
you.
You know, having I am a New Yorker, and having lived through 9/11 here in New York City was an unbelievable experience. And it's hard to imagine that we're coming up on the 16th anniversary of that disastrous day. And one of the things that angered me, infuriated me the most on 9/11, in addition to all the obvious, I had testified before Congress 4.5 years before 9/11 about the nexus between immigration fraud, visa fraud, and terrorism because of 2 terror attacks carried out in the United States in 1993. So the fact that our government refused, and this is both political parties,
yes,
driven by greed, driven by a demand for campaign contributions, which frankly are nothing more than bribes. I got an award from the government of Japan for helping them with a drug case. For half my 30 years with the INS, I was part of the so-called war on drugs. Not much of a war, unfortunately, but it did cost some of my good friends their lives. But I got an award from the government of Japan for helping them, and before I could take the police medal home that was given to me, my bosses had to make a determination that the materials that it was made out of were not worth more than $35. Otherwise, it would have hung on the wall at headquarters in Washington. So when they decided it was worth $30, I was able to take it home. It very proudly sits on my bookcase in my house. But the point of the matter is, wouldn't it be nice if our elected officials had to operate under a similar constraint?
Or the FBI.
I mean, think about this.
The CIA. Or the IRS.
Because, when you look at what is going on, and if you look at this decision, which I think was disastrous, and people may disagree, and by the way, as Americans, we should be able to disagree peaceably. It's right in the First Amendment, peaceable assemblage. It's all about freedom of speech and freedom of thought. And what we're witnessing isn't political correctness. I get crazy when I keep hearing this is about political correctness. This is Orwellian. It's about destroying the words so that you can destroy the thought behind the words. I have an article coming out for the social contract. I write for a bunch of websites, and I'll mention them a little later on. But the social contract is a quarterly publication. I frequently contribute, and what I like about the social contract is the articles can be quite lengthy. I did it, my most recent articles, and there were two of them. One of them was, I think, 25 pages long, and it was on immigration fraud, and I called it The Lies That Kill. But I have a new article coming out for the fall edition, and my title is The Road to Tyranny is Paved with Words Lost to Censorship. When we take the word alien, for example, out of the vernacular, and so that if you dare use the word alien, you're castigated as a hater, as a racist, as a bigot, God knows what they will accuse you of, then you can no longer have an honest conversation about immigration, and this started with Jimmy Carter. When you have the following administration, the Reagan administration, that's both sides of the aisle, provide an amnesty for what was supposed to be 1 million illegal aliens, we wound up giving that benefit to nearly 4 million, and no one ever talks about how many people they then brought to the United States. But understand that when someone gets a green card and then gets to be a United States citizen, they can bring their spouses, all of their minor children, and upon getting citizenship, they can bring their parents and their brothers and their sisters and all of their brothers and sisters' families, meaning their spouses and their children. That's what's known as chain migration. Mm-hmm. So we had that under the Reagan administration. They did not hire more agents to enforce the law, which is how we got into the predicament in the first place. And in point of fact, one of the other provisions that I agreed with the Reagan amnesty from 86 was to go after employers who hire illegal aliens. So that really increased the workload for the immigration agents, but they didn't hire any more agents. So that put them further behind in their ability to function and do the job they're supposed to do. And the icing on the cake, and most people outside government don't know this, that under the Reagan administration there was a confidentiality provision. So while I could share immigration files with other law enforcement agencies, the police, the FBI, DEA, whomever, as you would expect, amnesty files were off limits. And then they eventually said, well, if they come to you with a court order, then you can disclose it. But if you don't have a court order and you make that disclosure, you are committing a 5-year felony. So we had cases where the FBI would come to me and say, Mike, we need to find this guy. He's killed 2 people. We're afraid he's going to kill other people. If I didn't get a court order, I couldn't share the file with them. This is massive.
I think Melody had a question. We were talking before we brought you on air, and I think it's a really good question. Melody?
Well, you certainly have hit a lot of areas that we need to talk about, and, you know, I know immigration is a hot button for politicians, and right now we have DACA in the news with Mr. Trump and the administration and so forth. What's the connection with anchor babies? You know, during the campaign, we heard that they were going to, you know, eliminate the process for anchor babies. And how does that relate to what is going on with DACA today, if any at all?
With DACA, not directly, no. But the idea of the anchor baby is that the interpretation behind the idea that a child born in the United States is automatically a citizen at birth, unless the child is born to a diplomat. Diplomats are the exception because they're not subject to our laws. But the interpretation of the courts has been up until now, a child born in the United States to illegal alien parents or non-immigrant parents acquires citizenship at the moment of birth. So that it becomes a huge burden to the school system. And then that child, as a United States citizen, when he or she turns 21, can turn around and petition to have the parents become lawful immigrants. And that's why they call them anchor babies. By having that child in the United States, you've kind of dropped an anchor, and that anchor can then reel you in when that child turns 21. The only connection with DACA, and this is an important connection, and people really need to understand this. I'm glad you're asking me the question, Melody. Everyone is looking at the 800,000 dreamers, so-called. And by the way, I started out by talking about the word alien and how people get so upset about the word. By the way, legally, all it means is any person not a citizen or national of the United States. It's not an insult. It's not a pejorative. The problem with the word alien is it provides clarity to the conversation, and con artists always like to operate in the shadows. It's not that the illegals are hiding in the shadows. It's that the open border immigration anarchists are keeping the truth from the American people in the shadows. However, these 800,000 dreamers, if you look at the A in dreamer, you know what that A stands for, Melody?
Tell me.
Alien.
I do.
Alien.
Alien miners.
I should have known after.
So
I
think about it.
Attention.
This terrible word became palatable when we can link it to a false narrative. The American dream. A dream that's become ever more elusive by Americans because we're forcing Americans to compete with foreign workers by design. And by the way, when the politicians tell you the immigration system is broken, the immigration system is working like a Swiss watch, and it's 100% successful. To the open borders folks, the United States Chamber of Commerce, to the immigration lawyers, and many of them are politicians, by the way. But now, if we were to legalize those 800,000 illegal aliens, and by the way, they're not all children either. Think about this. What do you think the age cutoff was for filing to be part of this program, DACA, Deferred Action Childhood Arrival? What do you think the age cutoff was back on June 15th, 2012, when Mr. Obama stood in the Rose Garden and lied when he said, Congress has failed to act, so I'm acting. And the reason that's a lie, Congress voted no. Voting no is not the same as voting present, as did some Illinois senator. I think his name was Obama, voting present instead of saying yes or no. Well, Congress gave him a resounding no. So it wasn't that they failed to act, it was that they failed to deliver what he wanted. So he said, you know what, even though many times he kept saying, I don't have the authority, he decided to usurp an authority he didn't have to act illegally. Okay? But what do you think the age cutoff was? Because if you remember that speech, and I can't forget it, I wrote an article for Fox News Latino back then, and he referred to them as kids, young children, young kids,
18,
young people.
Wasn't it?
Sorry?
18 or 21?
How about 31?
Oh.
Wow.
And by now we're talking
I was still
about
a kid at 31.
Yeah, I know.
And by the way, by now we're talking about people who could be 36 years of age.
Yeah, they're not little children. And
they had to claim that they came prior to their 16th birthday. Now, how do you verify the entry date of someone who sneaks into the country when there's no record of entry created? And here's the limitation because the numbers were so huge. No interviews and no field investigation. The approval rate, at least initially, was well in excess of 95%. And what the American people don't know, and I know that, and by the way, I'm registered as a Democrat. I've always voted as an independent. I think both political parties could be prosecuted for racketeering. Okay, I make no bones about this nonsense. But, you know, when you listen to the stories about we're going to clear up the backlog, we're going to cut the red tape, do you know what that's code for? We're going to approve everything that lands on the desk. Because if you want to clear up the backlog, you have to approve just about everything. I was an adjudications officer for a year. I began my career as an immigration inspector at Kennedy Airport, and then I was at every single squad within the investigations branch. I was the first INS agent assigned to the Unified Intelligence Division of the Drug Enforcement Administration. Pardon me, for the last 10 years of my career, pardon me, I became a senior special agent assigned to the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force. So I had desks at the FBI, DEA, ATF.
We're heading into a break, and
okay.
I don't want to be ugly here, Melody, but he likes me best because CSC Talk Radio calls him Super Agent. We're going into a break. Your calls are welcome at 717.
I just met him.
I know. 717-300-1218. That's 717-300-1218. And Melody and Beth Ann and Michael will be right back.
Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com. and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated coins. Silver bars, rounds, and 90% silver bags are on hand for the silver investor. Gold self-directed IRAs are available. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, that's 1-800-375-4188.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the Scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a reestablished Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more, using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
Listening to Power Talks with Mike Cutler as our guest. He is the retired special agent for the INS. Has a great insight because he was boots on the ground literally regarding immigration and illegal immigration. Actually, Melody Mike is the one who woke my eyes up to HB1, and we have
H1Bs. Those visas,
yeah,
right? Yeah,
I'm dyslexic.
Yeah, they're terrible.
I'm dyslexic this morning. Excuse me.
That's okay.
And the fact that the legal immigration and the illegal immigration are both problems, and we're at a crisis situation here in the United States. He kind of woke me up to that. Sometimes I just need a little back and forth in the head, and it works. It wakes me up. I'm going to let Melody for just a second, Mike, if you will give us just a minute. She is going to offer a special to the listeners today from Discount Gold and Silver Trading. And as we head into a weekend, I think it'd be great to do that right now before we get back into our conversation.
Absolutely. This was priced yesterday for my evening show, late afternoon program, so prices had gone a little bit high. Actually, this was the one we did in the morning, $590, 1/10 ounce American Gold Eagle and 21-ounce American Silver Eagles, and the dates on those Silver Eagles is the current year, 2017, and it does include all your shipping costs for $590, so it's a great little package to get started. You can buy 1 or 100 of these packages. It provides you with a small fractional piece of gold, 1/10 ounce American Gold Eagle, and 21-ounce American Silver Eagles, and includes your shipping cost for $590. And this was yesterday's morning prices. Gold was up $13, $14 yesterday. Silver was up big, closed above $18. So not only were you getting a special from yesterday morning, but you're also getting this special from the additional increases of gold and silver from yesterday afternoon. So a great little package. Get it while you can.
It is a great package.
At this price.
Give them your number.
1-800-375-4188. That's 1-800-375-4188.
And we have Mike Cutler with us today, and we're going to talk mostly about immigration. And, Mike also has said many times on my show when I've had him on as a guest that immigration is really the root of a lot of majority of the problems we have here in the United States. Mike, I have your article in front of me. I really can't talk this morning. The last one that I got from you, the false choice, ending DACA or building the border wall. President Trump doesn't have to choose, and he shouldn't. And, of course, that was before he had made his announcement of what he was going to do with DACA. So I wanted to talk about that article just a little bit. I know you've got some new ones in the work, but I wanted to talk about this one just a little bit.
Absolutely. And, I write for Front Page Magazine, frontpagemag.com, sponsored by the David Horowitz Freedom Center. I also write for a terrific organization. I've been affiliated with them for many years, capsweb.org, Californians for Population Stabilization. Just to give a teaser about CAPS Web, my most recent article was last month over there about how we're educating our adversaries. I just want to make that point, and then we'll talk about DACA. Right now, we keep hearing from the politicians and all these other characters, we have a shortage of high-skilled American workers. We heard this even from Ted Cruz. We need to import the world's best and brightest so America can lead. When politicians tell you they believe in American exceptionalism, it needs to be more than a phrase. It was American workers and American brains that built the first atom bomb during the Second World War. It was Americans who broke the sound barrier, Americans who landed men on the moon repeatedly and returned them all safely to the Earth. No country has done that yet. It's America that has sent spacecraft out of the solar system. No other country has done that. We can go down a long list of our achievements. The Panama Canal. We can go on forever. And yet we're being told, we need to bring in the world's best and brightest. So we've had hundreds of thousands of workers fired because of the H-1B and other visa programs. And they're being forced, believe it or not, to train their replacements if they want their severance packages. Right now we have over 500,000 foreign students studying the STEM curriculum. STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. The top 3 countries that send us their engineering and science students, India, China, and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a distant third. China has a client state, and it's called North Korea. And if you wonder where North Korea is getting their technology to build nuclear weapons, and apparently ever more advanced nuclear weapons, and intercontinental ballistic missiles that essentially force us to stare down their gun barrel today. And if you look at China building its artificial island in the South China Sea, arming it to the teeth, and then building fleets of nuclear-powered battle vessels, war machines, understand we trained their engineers. And before 9/11, actually, it was 5 years, 2 days short of 5 years after the 93 bombing at the World Trade Center, none other than Dianne Feinstein on the Senate Judiciary Committee participated in a hearing in foreign terrorists operating in the United States. And this dovetails with DACA also, by the way. So she had said, maybe we ought to rethink the visa waiver program, and we should, because that visa requirement is a layer of security. And then she said maybe we should stop giving visas to aliens who come from countries that sponsor terrorism. It's exactly what Donald Trump said, but nobody fainted and nobody rioted. And then she said maybe we ought to not be giving training in nuclear physics and biochemistry to citizens of countries that sponsor terrorism, because we could be teaching our adversaries how to make weapons of mass destruction. And this was February the 24th, 1998, the Senate Judiciary Committee. And I've testified before that committee on a few occasions. I've also been before committees in the House. I think altogether I'm up to 17 congressional hearings now. So please understand that this is not a left-right issue. I can't seem to get rid of my frog. forgive me, it's
Balls
a matter
in the air.
of protecting America. And by the way, we went from 28 visa waiver countries on 9/11. We should have 0 now after the findings of the commission. We have 38 visa waiver countries because of the Discover America partnership, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and the executives of the hotel, travel, and hospitality industries. Isn't it great to know that national security decisions are being made by people responsible for room service? I mean, this is madness. Think about that.
Well, the lies over these jobs, it really gets to me. And Melody, you lived in Missouri for a short time, or very long time. I don't remember how long you lived here, but somebody was tweeting the other day about who's gonna work in the meatpacking plants. If we get rid of all the aliens, the illegal aliens or whatever. And I'm thinking, I worked in a meat packing plant. I worked at Burger
I'm glad you raised the issue. I helped with a lawsuit.
It's crazy what they're telling people.
But look at this. Do you know 20 years ago, those meat packing plants paid $18 an hour?
Yeah.
Today, they're paying under $10 an hour.
Yeah.
This is what we've done. This is a race to the bottom. And Alan Greenspan testified for Chuck Schumer, and I hate Greenspan so much. Every time I see him, my blood boils. I was on a show the day after he testified before Chuck Schumer. This was April 30th, 2009. I was so angry when the young lady whose show I was on asked me what I thought of Greenspan as I watched, because I watched the hearing streaming live, and I think the video might still be up on the Senate website. You have to read his words. Go to my website, michaelcutler.net, or go to my other articles, and you can see this quote. I was so angry. She said, "What did you think of Greenspan?" I said, "Well, I knew when I watched him I was witnessing a first." And she said, "I'm going to regret this, I'm sure of it, but what kind of a first was it?" I said it was the first time somebody testified while suffering from rigor mortis. I mean, this is a guy who has a mansion in the Hamptons. Think about that. But during this hearing, and this is what galled me, there was so much to what he said that galled me. But he said, here's the reason we need the H-1B visas that Bill Gates has been calling for. He said, first, skilled workers and their families form new households. They will of necessity move into vacant housing units, the current glut of which is the prices of American homes. Those vacant housing units were American homes lost to foreclosure, and it wasn't because of, as he put it, the price. He said the house price declines are a major factor in mortgage foreclosures, and the plungent value of the vast quantity of U.S. mortgage-backed securities that contributed substantially to the disabling of our banking system. That's a lie. What disabled the banking system were the subprime mortgages that he created, supported, and pushed. And then the second benefit was the one that, if you take blood pressure pills, get them now before, avoid the rush later. The second bonus to bringing in huge numbers of H-1B visa holders would address the increasing concentration of income in this country. In other words, someone's making too much money. I wonder who it is. Is it Gates? Is it Zuckerberg? Is it Greenspan? Not hardly.
It's not me.
Nor I. So here's what he said. Listen to this. You're going to be amazed, and the media refuses to cover this. And the politicians from both sides of the aisle refuse to discuss it with me when I meet with them in private, with a couple of exceptions. Greatly expanding our quotas for the highly skilled, that means the H-1Bs and others like it, would lower wage premiums of skilled over the lesser skilled. Wage premiums are salaries, folks. Skill shortages in America exist because we are shielding our skilled labor force from world competition. Quotas have been substituted for the wage pricing mechanism, and in the process, you're going to love this term, we have created a privileged elite whose incomes are being supported at non-competitively high levels by immigration quotas on skilled professionals. Eliminating such restrictions would reduce at least some of our income inequality. Where in the world does this guy come off referring to middle-class workers as the privileged elite? And people are dumb. When you hear the Democrats talk about wage equality and $15 an hour, well, I will tell you what. Philosophically, I agree with a $15 an hour minimum wage. And again, we may disagree, but this is America. But when you tell me that $30,000 a year is how you attain wage equality, what you're talking about isn't wage equality. You're not talking about a minimum wage. You're talking about a standard wage. Yeah, because what they're trying to do is pay people the same amount of money, no matter their educational level or their skill set. That is the basis for communism.
Well, it's coming close. Well, it's coming. It's uniting, and it's the pre-workings of a universal income. That's where they're headed.
And what they want, and what the reason they want open borders is so they can move people around like chess pieces on the global chessboard. Yeah. And when we heard the lies from Janet Napolitano, and when we heard the lies from George Bush, the borders have never been more secure. I will never get that image of Obama standing in El Paso, and I've been to El Paso. Bullets have flown across the border from Mexico into El Paso because it's right across the Rio Grande from arguably the most violent city in the Western Hemisphere, Ciudad Juarez. And he said, those folks won't be happy till we build a moat around America and put alligators in the moat. You remember that speech that he gave?
Yeah.
So here's the question. If the borders were so secured, how did those 800,000 dreamers get here? And it wasn't just them. There are many more that, though they have serious criminal histories, so they may not come out of the shadows, but you have criminals among them. You have gang members among them. And let's remember, they could be as old as 36 today. So it was lie after lie, and then the president said, well, you know, we're using prosecutorial discretion. No, I called it prosecutorial deception. Prosecutorial discretion, to give you an example, is the police officer with a radar gun who tags you for going 8 miles an hour over the speed limit on a dry road. You're not tailgating. Everything is fine. And he or she says, I'm not going to bother. I'm not going to go after that. That's a small fish. I'm waiting for a bigger fish. That's prosecutorial discretion. But to take resources you don't have to give a benefit to people who shouldn't be here is not prosecutorial discretion. It's legislation by decree, and that's how dictatorships, not democracies, function.
All right. We have a caller. We have a caller, Mike. We have Joe from Arkansas. Joe, thank you for holding.
Yeah, well, thank you for taking my call. I wanted to make a comment on the... Yeah, hello, Mr. Cutler. Good to hear you. I wanted to make a comment on the situation with China that you were talking about. And that says, in 1963, the Congressional Record published a list of the current goals of the Communist Party. And one of them was free trade with all nations, regardless of communist affiliation and regardless of whether the items traded could have military uses. And so I figure that's why we have all this trade with China now. And I have heard some conservative commentators on the radio say, you know, Trump has been saying that he would like to cut off trade with any nation that trades with North Korea.
Correct.
And, I've heard some conservative commentators saying that, yeah, they think this ought to be done. They think they ought to put a high tariff on Chinese stuff. But they're afraid that it would have horrible ramifications to our economy, that it would collapse the stock market. And when I hear that kind of thing, I think about how when I was young, you know, we didn't have any trade with China. Nothing came from China. All the things that we now buy from China, we made here in this country, and our economy was great. We had lots of good jobs for Americans, and we didn't need China for anything. So why do these people
and we didn't need illegal aliens to mow our lawns or wash our dishes?
Right on, yeah. And so why do these people think there would be some kind of disaster to our economy if we stopped trading with China, when that was what we've done for most of our history, and we're better off when we didn't trade with China?
Well, that's a great question, Joe. So here's the Mike Cutler answer, and you tell me how this works for you. Back then, the average CEO made maybe 20 times or 30 times what the average employee who worked for him was earning. Today, you have CEOs making 500 and 550 times what their average employee earns. Think about that. So they're concerned that somehow they're not going to be making $100 million a year anymore. The outrage is that we now have corporate welfare. That's what we now have. And Trump is so right on so many issues. You know, he talked about NAFTA. And I remember a commentator here in New York back when they were debating NAFTA, and he said, NAFTA, we don't have to. And I had a chuckle about it. But if you look at the massive influx of illegal aliens from Mexico, it really was the result, the byproduct of NAFTA. NAFTA made it impossible for Mexican farmers to compete with companies like ADM here in the United States. ADM dumped their produce in Mexico. It was bargain basement prices. The Mexican farmers lost their homes that had been in their families for generations. This is how we wind up with enemies around the world. And when they could no longer support themselves, they headed north along with the people who used to work for them because they didn't have jobs either. So if you look at passage of NAFTA, you can see an immediate correlation between passage of NAFTA and a massive influx of illegal aliens. But by the way, it's not just about Mexico. You know, we're a country of 50 border states. When they hear this nonsense, let's build a wall and that solves the problem. I wrote an article a while back, and I called it Border Security and the Immigration Colander. We absolutely must make that dangerous Mexican border secure. I was in El Paso a few years ago working with a law firm. I was doing expert witness testimony at a trial in Hawaii, but the law firm was based in El Paso. My room was on the top of a hotel right near the border facing south, and every night I could see the red lights of the police running from one place to another in Mexico, undoubtedly tracking down people who were involved in murders. So when you look at that bloodbath, we have to secure that border. But remember, none of the 9/11 hijackers ran the Mexican border. They came through ports of entry with visas, possibly false passports. If we had more time, I could read sections to you from the 9/11 Commission report about the threats posed by visa fraud, the way that people come into the airport and then disappear, the fact that we have a northern border that's highly porous. We have 95,000 miles of coastline. By design, we have never enforced the immigration laws from within the interior. And the politicians are doing what I call the immigration con job. Well, if we had mandatory E-Verify, the problem is solved. Well, not so quick. If you don't have enough agents, mandatory E-Verify means nothing. That's like saying that if you're worried about speeders, put up more road signs. No, you need cops with radar guns and summons books behind the road signs. Because if you wanted to hire illegal aliens, even if we have mandatory E-Verify, what's the obvious workaround? Hire people off the books. In the beginning of my career, I used to raid the factories, and you would see they had time cards for 20 people, and you look out onto a factory floor with 150 people, and they'd say, where are their time cards? But they were all working off the books. So they had two sets of books. And so, you know, unless you have agents who can physically go out there and make arrests and conduct the audits and so forth, these laws are meaningless. You know, the laws of the universe are immutable. The speed limit of light, the speed of light, as Einstein clearly explained it, is immutable. You can't alter it except by making light pass through a different medium, but through a vacuum, it's a constant. Speed laws that man creates, that are legislated, have to be enforced for them to be meaningful. If we dealt with drunk drivers the way we're dealing with illegal immigration, instead of lowering acceptable blood alcohol levels and having public service announcements and putting in those sobriety checkpoints and so forth, if they handled it the way they're handling immigration, they would raise the blood alcohol level to 3.0. Nobody could be conscious at that level, and then they could hold a news conference and say, since we changed the law, there's been no fatalities attributable to legally drunk drivers. Of course, they didn't do that because they knew they couldn't get away with it, but that's what they do with immigration. The system is broken, so let's legalize everybody. Now, understand that the 9/11 Commission found that fraud in those applications was the key embedding tactic of terrorists. We've naturalized terrorists. Think of one of the two Tsarnaev brothers. Think of Faisal Shahzad, the Times Square bomber. Understand that we have been naturalizing terrorists because going back to the Clinton administration, the good moral character investigations we used to have to do for aliens that seek citizenship are no longer being done. It's all done. We're going to do a computer check. So a computer check is next to worthless. If the person is using a fake name and the person's fingerprints are not on file, that person will go undetected as a bad guy. And so when I look at what we've done is we're undermining our own national security and public safety, and DACA is just another step on that road to taking down America's borders that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is determined to do.
I think Melody had a question.
When we talk about the illegal alien working and so forth, do I mean, what are your ideas as far as correcting the problem? Businesses, I mean, you talked about businesses where there's 20 time cards and 150 people in the field.
Right.
I remember, and this has been going on for a long time, I lived in Arizona, for almost 30 years, beginning in 73. I mean, having illegal aliens come across the border has been a problem for a very, very long time. And so we continue to see it increase, and of course we are here where we are today. Businesses, I worked for restaurants. They'd get calls before, the INS was coming in, or ICE or whatever the department that would come in to check employees. They get a phone call. So as they're coming in the front door, everyone is exiting the back door. It's just like there's so much corruptness in this world today. Yeah. How do you eliminate the fraud?
I've never seen our government more corrupt, Melody.
I know. So how do you?
Well, and I think the common denominator from when I talk to Melody and when I talk to Mike is they both will mention the Chamber of Commerce. It has to go back to them. They're the ones that are kind of promoting this, and corporations. They all like he said, the executives, the high ups, the CEOs are making an extraordinary amount of money, while the people down below get less and less and have less hours to boot. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, more hours, but less money. But look, there's always room for more oarsmen on a slave ship, isn't there?
Mm.
And that's how. I mean, look how corporations treat the consumer today. I began my career as an inspector at Kennedy Airport in 1971. Back then, the airlines treated the passengers like a royalty.
Yes.
Today, you're treated like baggage. I'm heading to Colorado next week because I'm honored. I'm going to be the keynote speaker at Great Lakes for Constitution Week. And you get on an airplane today. I mean, look at the images of people being hauled off of airplanes.
I was going to say, be careful, Mike. Don't upset the boat and get drug off the plane.
Yeah, right. But you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, the customer used to always be right. And now they won't even look you in the eye. We're going into a break. Your calls are welcome. I apologize. I didn't give the phone number earlier in this particular segment. 717-300-1218. That's 717-300-1218. You're visiting with Melody, Beth Ann, and Mike Cutler on Power Talks, and we will be right back.
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host, Melody Cedarstrom, right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit DiscountGoldandSilverTrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, 1-800-375-4188. The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on Internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the Internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
The show goes fast. It's kind of like mine. It just goes fast. It's a fast hour. Mike, I have one question. And
sure.
I think it'll take us the rest of the... Well, I know everything else.
Okay.
No, I'm lying. I have one question for this moment, and it'll probably take us the rest of the show to get the answer. What do you think Congress is going to do with DACA now that it's in their lap?
I hope they do nothing. That's the best case. You know, if you look at this statement from the 9/11 Commission staff report, the simple sentence, once terrorists had entered the United States, their next challenge was to find a way to remain here. Their primary method was immigration fraud. So as we approach the 16th anniversary of 9/11, I want everyone to think about this. On September 11, 2001, 19 young men barely out of their teens inflicted more casualties upon the United States and on the mainland than did the entire Japanese fleet at Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. Think about that. With no interviews, no field investigations, 800,000 aliens who entered the United States surreptitiously would be granted lawful status. And people say, well, you'll know who they are. You're going to do background investigations. Background investigations on what? I can tell you from experience as an agent, you could arrest people, but if they had no documentation when they entered the United States, it's kind of like saying they don't have a scorecard. So who's who and what's what? If you don't know the identity of that person, and fingerprinting them may not reveal anything, because many third world countries don't use fingerprinting the way we do. And if they haven't been arrested here, it doesn't mean they're good guys. They snuck in. Chuck Schumer, the architect of the agricultural amnesty provisions of the 86th amnesty, wants to see a 5-year felony for people who trespass on critical infrastructure and national landmarks. Think about it. But when you trespass on America, Chuck thinks you're entitled to United States citizenship.
Great example.
This is delusional.
Hypocrisy.
So we need to focus on Americans first. I'm not lacking compassion. I'm the son of an immigrant. My mother came here ahead of the Holocaust. I'm Jewish. I was named for my mother's mother, who was killed in Poland. And I'm in favor of legal immigration. I'm not anti-immigrant, but that's the narrative. As an inspector, I admitted many more aliens than I denied entry to. By the way, remember when the president got all the bad press when he kept 200 aliens out of the United States? The courts have now ruled against him. Do you know in 2013 how many aliens were denied entry at ports of entry?
How many?
And remember, Obama was the president.
Yes.
200,000. and many of them had visas. Understand that.
They're either completely ignorant or the hypocrisy is just out the wazoo.
It's mind-boggling. But by the way, everyone knows what DACA means, maybe because it rhymes with caca, okay? But,
oh, ouch.
But I couldn't resist. But here's the point. Everyone knows it because the media has been happy to dutifully report what Obama called it. I ask you, do you know what the name of President Trump's executive order on immigration is?
Tell us the name.
Everyone's
I know
calling
you did
it a travel ban, right?
Yeah, but it wasn't.
No. I'll tell you the exact title, but I'm going to explain to you. When I tell you the title, it's going to blow your mind, and you're going to immediately know why the mainstream media will not provide the actual name of the executive order. Because people would call the White House to thank the president for looking out for them and their families. So you create controversy by lying and misleading. It's not a travel ban, and it's not about Muslims. If the president wanted to keep Muslims out of America, he's doing an inept and incompetent job. Indonesia is not on the list. By itself, Indonesia, the world's largest Muslim-majority country, has almost as many citizens as all 6 of the countries on the list combined. He didn't bring in Saudi Arabia or Pakistan. We can go down a whole list. This isn't a Muslim ban. It's not a travel ban. Let me tell you what the actual name of the presidential executive order is. Protecting the nation from the entry of foreign terrorists into the United States. Protecting the nation from the entry of foreign terrorists into the United States. It's a brilliant title. It's clear. I read it word for word. You know, Jeff Sessions is a tremendous attorney general. I would argue he's the most capable and brilliant attorney general we've had in decades. He honored me greatly. 10 years ago, I had testified before 3 House and 1 Senate hearings about comprehensive immigration reform, and then I wrote a commentary for the Washington Times, and I gave that terrible piece of legislation a new name. I called it the Terrorist Assistance and Facilitation Act. Senator Sessions quoted me from the floor of the United States Senate on 3 separate days during the contentious floor debate with attribution and sent me a certificate to commemorate it. I was with Jeff Sessions at a panel discussion in Florida, and you could see that if you go to my website, Cutler.net, or go to my articles at Front Page Mag. They have it, capsweb.org, The Social Contract. I write occasionally for Newsmax. I've been doing a lot of their programs. This weekend I'm going to be on One American News Network. We just taped the segment for today, and it's going to run the rest of the weekend. It's about getting the truth out. The mainstream media no longer tells the truth. They've become arms of propaganda for corporate America. Most of these television programs belong to networks that have second and third language subsidiaries. They have an inherent interest to keep that population of viewers here in America so they can charge more for the advertising. Understand that this is all about chasing the dollar. And as I've explained it on some programs, as long as the Chamber of Commerce and a host of other special interest groups, labor unions, religious groups, I don't care what, they're all feeding at the trough. As long as they are more fixated on head counts in airplanes and head counts at the baseball park than they are with body counts in the morgue, nothing is going to change. I hope I make sense to you. And by the way, if people talk about how we're going to pay for the wall, if you could stop the flow of drugs, because that is the most accurate measure of border security. Heroin and cocaine are not produced in the United States. They are smuggled into the country, and not just across the Mexican border. They're coming in on international airline flights. They're pouring across the Canadian border, through our seaports, and certainly lots of it across the Mexican border. If you look at the violence associated with that, if you look at MS-13, and I started investigating MS-13 25 years ago, it was a minor problem. The flow of unaccompanied minors, thanks to Mr. Obama, flooded America so that now 40 states are infested by MS-13, which has been described as the most perilous gang in America. Some have argued that it should be declared a terrorist organization. And Long Island, right here in New York, in the last 2 years, at least 20 children were killed by MS-13. And who did they kill? Members of the Latino community. When you hear people talk about racial profiling, the journalists, Joe Arpaio was a profiler. I met Joe. He wasn't a profiler. He was trying to do his job. He was facing a kidnapping in his jurisdiction every day, a kidnapping, murders, home invasions. But the people that scream about profiling are the same journalists who very easily talk about Latino voters. In law enforcement, profiling has been ruled by the courts to be an acceptable, proactive methodology for getting bad guys. It involves lots more than skin color or the person's last name. It's behavior, it's circumstances, it's time of day. It's a whole bunch of factors that go into that kind of a stop. I know, I've been there for 30 years. But when you have a reporter or a politician come on and say, well, if you want to attract the Latino voter, what they're looking at is the person's last name. If your last name is Ramirez or Garcia or Rodriguez, we don't need to know anything more about you. That tells us everything we need to know. When they talk about the Jewish voter, if you're wearing a Star of David, that's all we need to know. If you have black skin, you're a black voter, that defines who you are. If that isn't racism, bigotry, and stupidity in action, I don't know what is. But nobody calls them on it. As Americans, we have got to grow a spine, and when people confront us with their false allegations, we need to stand our ground and tell them they can take a long walk on a short pier. We have allowed ourselves to be intimidated into not standing up for ourselves. It's not a matter of xenophobia to secure the borders. It's a matter of common sense. We lock our doors at night, especially when the police tell us that there's burglars roaming the neighborhood. You know, our immigration laws have nothing to do with race, religion, or ethnicity. If they did, I could never have enforced them. My family was decimated in the Holocaust because of bigotry and hatred and stupidity. But understand that our immigration laws are about keeping out criminals and spies and terrorists and people who would take Americans' jobs. What in the world is wrong with looking out for Americans?
And Mike, we hear music. We're going off the air. And I did have one more question, so we're going to have you back. We're going to have you back.
Okay, well, save the question, write it down, and I'll be glad to do it.
I will do it. I promise.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being our guest today. And
my privilege.
We appreciate it. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Michael Cutler, retired special agent, senior agent. You can visit his website by going to michaelcutler.net. Melody, have a great weekend. Thank you so much.
You too, folks. Be safe out there,
Absolutely.
especially down there in that Florida area with Hurricane Irma. God bless.
You're in our prayers and thoughts. God bless.
Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800 375-4188.